I found out something very unsettling about Harry. He gambles.
What do you mean he gambles?
He plays craps in the back room of a private club. I mean, you know, you 11, come on, little Joe. Snake eyes, hard way 8s. That's how it goes. He loses a lot of money.
You had no idea?
No, I didn't.
Welcome to the Crap Vegas podcast.
Vegas, here we come.
Vegas!
Here are your hosts, Chris and Josh.
Happy Memorial Day to everyone. I'm Chris, he's Josh, and we did it. We made it to episode 2.
I'm just amazed that we made it to episode 2, but I'm proud of us for getting to episode 2, and mostly on time. We're trying to release these, if we can, every 2 weeks on Sunday. We pushed one day, partly because of the Memorial Day weekend and Chris's trip, which we'll talk about in just a moment, but I'm glad to be here.
So am I, Josh. So am I. For those that want to reach us in the future, you can always email us at podcast@crapvegas.com. We have a text voicemail line that's 702-978-7775, or by far the easiest is always going to be on Twitter. He's at Vegas Duffy, and I'm at Small Whale 13. So, Josh, I guess today the big topic is Encore Boston Harbor.
Yes, I think that's gonna dominate at least the beginning of our conversation. So for folks that don't follow on Twitter or somehow didn't know, Chris took a quick little jaunt to Encore Boston Harbor this past weekend, and I wanted to talk to him a little bit about his trip and give his thoughts. And so, Chris, let's start at the end. You were texting me a little bit along the way and had some ups and downs and your feelings about the property, but I think you ended with both of us saying we might want to go back there in the fall. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Josh knows from some early text messages that my first impression wasn't the best of certain aspects of the casino. And I wasn't sure it was a place I was going to want to return after this weekend. But as it went a little further into the day, a couple of my issues were overcome. And I do think it's a place sometime this fall that you and I will want to go visit. Just to check it out and have a little bit of fun. Certainly not for earning tier credits, I'll say that.
Right. That's exactly what I was going to get to. But let's start at the beginning. So first of all, heading into this trip, you'd never been to Encore Boston Harbor, and you didn't have a host or any relationship with the property. Is that right?
That is correct. Never been there, never talked to anyone there. I was flying blind on this one.
Hope I don't sound like you're on the witness stand there. Is that right?
I have no recollection of this event.
That's a good answer for any trip to Vegas or any gambling related trip. I have no recollection of that trip. I lost my train of thought. So tell me how you went about arranging the trip.
So I think this is where Wynn shines as a corporation. So I reached out to my Vegas Wynn host, let him know I was interested in traveling to Boston to check out his property. He immediately responded. Said he'd have one of the hosts at the property contact me, and I would receive contact back probably within 6 hours after I got his text. And they did everything that I could ever ask. They set up the transportation, they set up the room, and anything else that I needed up front, they had taken care of before I got there.
And if you're just new to Wynn properties, I think that's one of the things that really helps make Wynn special is their, at least in my experience, and Chris, I think it's you too, is their responsiveness to, as we said before, we're not that big of players in their in their eyes, but they treat us. Part of the reason I think we like the property is they treat us, just I can't say as good as any player they have, but they really treat us well. And part of that starts with the responsiveness.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I'll say that I've gone to, say an MGM property and it's a new one for me. And I have attempted to reach out through my current host that I may have in Vegas before to get help on the other property. And they almost always defer and say, oh, you'll have to reach out to somebody on their team. That's kind of separate from what I do.
Right.
So it was unique to Wynn that they gave this assistance in the first place. And it definitely draws me closer to them.
That's great. I'm glad to hear it. So talk about your trip. What, the beginning of it, what happened? How'd you get there? What did you find when you arrived?
So arrived late on Friday. I think by the time everything shook out, I got in around 9:30, 10 o'clock on Friday night. Transportation was waiting for me outside, which was great. Didn't have any issues getting that. A lot of people asked about, where it's located and travel times and stuff like that. From the airport to the casino, I'm going to say it was 15 minutes. It was not a long ride by any means. And somebody else asked about like how far it is from there to like downtown Boston to check a baseball game or something. Again, about 15 minutes.
You even know that?
Yeah, I looked into it. I didn't leave the casino, so
I was going to say
it was a moot point. No,
I was going to say Chris isn't going to know the answer to that question.
Put it this way: I couldn't tell you what the weather was in Boston this weekend because I don't think I ever felt it. But no, it's about 15 minutes everywhere from what I could tell. But there are plenty of restaurants on site, to keep you full, and there's things to do if you want to. So no, the trip itself was perfectly fine. Check-in went well. The room looks almost identical to the old Wynn rooms. If somebody's looking for an understanding of, if you've been to Wynn Vegas before they remodeled, I think it's the exact same furniture. It's the same carpet for sure. Bathroom looked the same. It's the same room.
How about the floor of the property itself? Very similar also, just in feel?
Kind of. They have the same sort of style chandelier that Wynn uses, except they're a bright red. And I think they're going to be a very polarizing thing for people. You're either going to think they're beautiful or they're absolutely hideous.
Gotcha.
I'm not going to give my feelings on that, but the ceiling height is extremely high because there's a mezzanine, there's a second floor to the property, and there is gaming on the second floor.
Now, is there a from that mezzanine area, can you look down?
Yes, it overlooks onto the main casino floor. At least I was on the second floor a decent amount because that's where their high limit room is for Blackjack and Baccarat. And then they also had some slot machines on the other side of the second floor that I didn't walk all the way over to. But that's also where their black card lounge was in the high limit area of the second floor. But yes, it all looks down onto the central gaming floor and a big bar in the middle. It's absolutely beautiful. The property, I can't say anything negative about the appearance of the property. It's top notch. It's exactly what you expect from a Wynn property. The only thing that's a little bit weird is they have a sports book. Like they have the video walls, they have the seating, they have all of that. But from what I've been told, they don't have legalized sports betting in Massachusetts. So they built it, but it's not open. Ready. They have the TVs, but they can't take a bet. Now, granted, I had no desire to make a bet, but that was a big complaint that I heard from a couple people while I was there.
Interesting.
So
I guess they're set up. Yeah,
they're planning for the future.
That's interesting. I haven't paid that much attention, obviously, to Massachusetts sports betting laws, but
yes,
it reminds me, as you're talking about the 2-level casino. Obviously, Circa came to mind, and in Vegas, similarities. Have you spent enough time in Circa?
Yeah, I mean, I've spent my 2 trips there. And don't have much of a desire to go back, but you know what it reminds me of more? It reminds me of kind of Planet Hollywood's mezzanine.
Okay.
How it does, has that escalator going up and it looks down on everything.
Right.
They have some spiral staircases and stuff walking you upstairs, but it has that kind of more open feel that I don't think Circus feels very open. Maybe it's just me. But it does feel very similar.
Right. The other one I was at relatively recently was the Harrah's in Kansas City, Missouri. And it has a 2-level casino as well that you can see down onto the main gambling floor.
I mean, the good news is it creates better airflow when you have that, that very tall, vaulted ceiling in there. It gives you nice sight lines looking straight up because you can see kind of everything going on. So it does make for a pretty environment. It feels more open than Wynn Vegas, but it's significantly smaller too.
And you mentioned, and this is something, of course, that goes to my heart. You mentioned something that maybe you hosted, and you mentioned the Black Lounge.
Yes. So I think for anybody that follows us know, I'm not a black card holder at this point. I'm a late switch to the Wynn, franchise. So I haven't had an opportunity to get after that. I'm close. We're getting there.
We're hopeful.
Not there. Yeah. But I will say that one thing, and I even touched base on this in my article I wrote last week before I went. As soon as I sat down at a blackjack table in high limit Friday night, it was probably 10 o'clock. I had been there for 5 minutes. The host that was working with me was down on the floor, shaking hands, introducing himself, letting me know if there's anything I need. And, here's where you can go for this and that. But what Josh was referencing is there is a black card lounge that's just behind the high limit upstairs, specifically for Wynn black card holders. And he had told me he had already added me to the list so I could get in without holding the card. If I needed anything else, just to let him know.
That's cool.
Yeah, I thought that was an unexpected perk.
Did you go in and check it out?
No.
You see, people, we really just gamble.
No, I mean, yeah, it was extremely nice of him to do so. I was very thankful. But I'm not big on lounges in general. We still have diamond lounges here in the Midwest and a lot of Caesars properties. I can't remember the last time I stepped into one. It's nice to grab a snack, I guess, occasionally, and a drink if you really want one. But I can eat later and I can get drinks while I'm playing.
Right. Well, it was nice that the effort was made to set you
yes,
up.
Absolutely. That was I think that was point 3 when we talk about host, is doing something unexpected and special, and that was absolutely not required and something I did not ask for, but he had went ahead and taken the initiative to do.
So a question that I know comes up when a lot of people give hotel trip reports and things like that, and it's of interest to me too. Water pressure.
It's just like Wynn Vegas. It's extremely strong. I mean,
take the paint off you, huh?
I love good water pressure too, but they use those same shower heads that I think every casino nowadays uses. What are they, Speakmans or whatever they're called? Yes, it feels like somebody took a power washer, it just turned it on to you. But no, it's very strong.
I just popped into my head as I'd rather have that than the other way around.
Oh yes, I mean if it won't take the soap or shampoo off my head, or something, then yeah, that's not good.
Not only that, if you're itching to get down to the casino floor, it can be quick. You can get a quick, effective shower. And
it woke me up very quickly, and I was ready to go Saturday morning.
So that takes us down to the casino floor. So talk a little bit about that, what it was like in ambiance, what the games were, limits, everything like that.
It was kind of a tale of two worlds between the high limit area and the downstairs main floor for me. So when I had first started talking to Josh, I was playing upstairs in high limit blackjack. I felt like I needed to try to make some money before I went and lost it at the craps table. And it's beautiful up there. The dealers were extremely good. They were fast. They were knowledgeable. They were friendly. Had some great conversations with them. The whole area was very nice. The only thing that I will say, Josh, you'll find this interesting. So I didn't open credit with this casino because I didn't know if I'd be going back, but I did send some front money in on a wire. That was all set up perfectly. It took about 10, 15 minutes to execute all the paperwork upon arrival. But I walked upstairs and went to take a marker off of it, and they brought me one of those electronic marker issuers like Resorts World uses.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, right. I thought that was really interesting because, Wynn Vegas is all paper.
Right.
But I guess they were trying to be higher tech, so they brought me – it's the same exact system Resorts World uses. I have no idea who manufactures it, but I've used it there before. So they bring you the little almost looks like like a credit card swiping machine sort of thing with a touchscreen on it. And then, of course, they asked you to input your PIN. And I was like, hold on, I don't have a PIN. I said, I don't have credit with you guys, and I've never been here. I said, is it my slot PIN? And she goes, no, it's not that. It's completely different. And I said, okay. So I tried my slot PIN just to make sure. Denied the first one. She told me after 3, you get locked out. I said, do you have any suggestions? She goes, well, maybe. She goes, maybe it could be the last 4 of your player's card. So she handed me my player's card, and I typed it in. Denied again. Uh-oh. She's like, hold on, don't type a third time. I was like, okay. So we probably waited 10 minutes, and a casino manager came down, and they said, oh, by default, it's your birth year if you haven't set it up.
Oh, all right.
So
now you've given it away, so I hope it changed.
Yeah, well, I've changed it now. And there's no money on file there either, so good try. So I typed in my birth year, and sure enough, it got me to the signature screen, and we were good to go. So that was a little bit of a frustration, but not enough to mess
one of those
up.
Just hiccups that comes the first time.
Yeah, it's just kind of frustrating the first time you're there and that's going on. But no, the dealers and everything were great on the second floor. It's absolutely beautiful. Drink service was terrific up there. She was there within 30 seconds. They had all sorts of top shelf bourbons that I would love. The only thing I will say about drink service is it's the smallest pour I think I've ever seen across the country. It's small enough that I actually had to ask, what size are you guys using?
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And they're using a 3/4 ounce pour.
That's what I was going to ask you. Yeah. 0.75.
Yeah. So it's small. Even the glasses themselves were extremely small. I think trying to hide that fact. And you don't notice it too much, but it was almost so small. You were looking for a refill, every 10 minutes because it was just such a small pour.
Right.
So it kind of was a hindrance, but I'm sure it's state law that this is what they're going to pour because they don't want to overserve, and
right.
I'm sure they have limits on how many they'll bring you.
Hopefully not in the high limit room, but who knows?
No, she was pretty good. And it's not like I'm going to sit there and drink like 7 ounces of liquor in an hour either. So I'm not trying to push it.
So
But it was just something worth mentioning for
Right.
those that are bigger drinkers.
So after blackjack, you went downstairs and you played some craps and you hit the all tall small 4 times.
Wrong, and wrong. So the reason that I even went upstairs in the first place to blackjack is because they had 6 craps tables set up, 2 on each side, 1 on the end cap sort of thing. It's directly in front of the cage. I mean, we're talking, Josh, 5 steps. So if you're somebody that likes to be next to the cage, you were right there.
Right.
But all the tables probably had 14 people on them. There was 0 room. There was no chance. And I don't like playing at a crowded table anyways. So there was no way for me to really sneak in there and find a space.
That's what I was going to say.
Sorry,
I was just going to.
Yo, you're good.
Sorry.
No, I mean, we have to cut ourselves off. I mean, that's what we do here.
It's what we do, right?
Yeah, there were 2 $15 tables and 4 $25 tables. And everyone was jam-packed.
$2.15 on a Friday night, though. That's interesting.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting, too. I wish they had a $50 table to kind of empty things out a little bit, and they probably would have made more money. But they didn't. So I finally came downstairs from blackjack when I saw a few openings at a table where one side only had 2 players on it, which I still don't particularly like. But I got down there, got bought in. And to address a couple things that you said, there is no feature bet on the table. None.
No fire, no repeater, no all tall small.
No fire, no all tall small. And honestly, it kind of threw me for a loop. I didn't think it would be that big of a deal. I thought, well, I'll just save money. I'll actually make money on those. Right? Coming out, if we throw a 7, I'll make money for once. It would be really exciting. It made the game extremely boring.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, all those 2 3s, 11s, and 12s, all those wasted rolls, you didn't feel like you were making any progress towards anything greater. So,
right.
If a shooter came and, threw 11, 12, 12, 2, 6 out, well, yeah, you had 6 rolls, but you made no money on it. And it's not like I'm going to place a field bet every time. I mean, they were playing 2 times on the 2 and the 12, so it wasn't exactly a great bet there either. So that really worked against me more than I thought it would, because I was not a fan of that at all.
Worked against you as far as the enjoyment of it.
The enjoyment factor of the game. I mean, financially, I'm sure it was great.
Right.
But I'm not doing this for a financial move. It's more about the entertainment side of things.
Sure, yeah.
And it definitely took away from it. I'll say that.
I know, as terrible as far as odds wise goes, the all tall small is. I mean, I didn't used to play it, and now I play it, and it does add a level of fun. If you don't get enough with having all the numbers covered like we play,
yeah. No, I still felt like I was missing out. Yeah,
right. But no, I'm kind of used to it and like it too, and I know that's terrible, and it's not a great bet and that kind of thing. But it definitely adds to the enjoyment and thrill of it.
And I think it's so funny because I get so mad about blackjack tables with side bets. And I used to yell at people all the time as a blackjack player. They were playing like 3-card poker on the side. And before they changed it, when it used to pay 9-1 on any 3-card poker hand, it was like like an 8%, 9% house edge. And now I think it's like 15 or 17 the way they do it with that 3-card extreme stuff. But, the all tall small is probably far worse than that last time I checked.
Right.
But I do not hesitate at all.
I'm the same way. I like it. It's the thing that gets me. I don't know if you saw it at Encore Boston Harbor, but at some of the local casinos, we have tribal casinos around me as well. And some of those casinos, people will just play the all tall small, or, maybe they have just a minimum pass line bet and they're playing the all tall small. And that's where, and I like that. But if you get a lot of quick, 7s on the come out, it takes forever to get those bets reset up again, and that kind of thing. Especially if they let dollars, if they allow singles on the features.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'd rather see nickel minimums on that stuff. But I mean, some of my local casinos, Josh, they all have all tall small, but they won't let you make the bet without a pass line bet.
It's possible that these don't either. I don't play at our local casinos very often, but I remember just the amount that, people are playing very small pass line bets and then really, really, bumping up the features. And
sure.
It takes forever.
Yeah, it does. And I would say that I expected the game to be significantly faster, not having features. That was not the case. And it kind of feeds well into my second point about why at first I didn't want to come back.
Right.
The dealers, it was not good. I mean, we've all dealt with, a new dealer here or there. This felt like a break-in joint where everybody was bad. And I played 3 or 4 sessions where I didn't find a single competent dealer. There was a lot of mispays.
And Chris, you mentioned that to me over text on, I guess it was Friday night probably. And I was just shocked, thinking, it's a Wynn property and you expect, really, really top-notch crews almost all the time. And then, started thinking about, and I don't have a lot of experience, and I know you don't either with the Boston area as far as casinos and that kind of thing. And maybe that it's just hard to get, crews to stay a long time, or hard to get, competent crews to begin with, or, any ideas?
When I first got there, when we were riding over to the property, I was talking to my driver, and I guess I should have paid more attention about like what's going on in this casino market. Because we got on property and I was about to get out of the car, and I was like, so are all the other casinos like in this same little area here? And he goes, yep, all of them, all one of them. It's just us. And so I found out more as I started, and people in the Northeast already know all this stuff, but I guess, like Mohegan and Foxwoods and all that stuff's up there, but it's all an hour plus away. Right. So the more I talked to people about it, the more I started hearing, there's no competition around. So you're not stealing dealers from competitors. Most of these people, this is their first job. I'll say that 90% of the dealers that I saw were young. And by young, I mean, they look 21 to 25.
Right.
So it's not the same level of professionalism that you get out at Wynn Vegas. And it really took away from the game for me, at least my first 2 or 3 sessions, because it slowed it down so much. I mean, Josh, it got to the point where they just could not get bets set up properly. Like mine was okay because I was betting the same on every number, and I'd just say across, and she'd figure it out finally, although she struggled, over and over again. But somebody would throw in, $150 for an inside bet or $160, whatever it is, and she just could not get it right, could not figure it out. For all these people, it's not specific to one employee. They could not get bets set. And it kind of goes in the same realm of the dealers being issues. The clientele, it was rough. You can tell that this was, a locals joint for the most part. You had a lot of people, and maybe it's just that Northeast mentality. You had a lot of people, almost everybody bought in mid-roll. I'll say that. Nobody other than me, I think, ever waited. And they didn't buy in, they'd buy in for $60, and that was their bankroll. Somebody else would throw like 21s on the table and a couple 5s. You had a lot of that stuff taking place mid-roll, which was slowing it down significantly. But it was just a mess. I mean, I did not enjoy the first, 3-4 sessions of it because all that was going on.
It reminds me of when I was in Las Vegas last year around just before Christmas with Michael Traeger's Travel Zork gathering. We had a group table at Plaza, and it was as packed as I've ever seen. It was all of us that were part of the group, packed this craps table at Plaza. We had reserved it, and there were 14, 16, 20 people crowded in it,
jam-packed.
Yeah, jam-packed. And the problem was the dealers were fine, and the dealers were competent at Plaza, and nothing negative to say about them in that regard as far as their competency. But they had a hard time with the limits we were playing with that many people. It was just overwhelming, and I wonder if, the newer dealer at a full table obviously is much more difficult to, you're trying to move quickly and trying to calculate those payouts, and that kind of thing can be, I would think, very challenging.
I mean, I agree with everything you said, Josh. I do.
But you wouldn't expect that it win, right?
No, you wouldn't, because they kind of pride themselves on being the best of the best. So that it struck me. But even when they just had opened a table on Saturday, it was around noon. I was the first player at the table. There was nobody else there. I went to put my numbers across. I threw her a purple chip and said, hey, give me 275 across, because they take the VIG up front, which is another thing that rubbed me the wrong way. Said, give me 275 across. And then she gave me 275 and change. And still put the bets up correctly. Well, that was great. Right. I wish she would do that more often. But then for every time that happened, I would have a $200 5, and it hits. Should pay 280, and she would hand me like 150. And I'd have to stop the game completely because they'd be about to spin the dice back out. And I was like, hold, stop. and we'd
Right.
have to bring the game to a pause and explain what happened. It's like, look, here's what you gave me. Here's what you should have paid me. And then they'd argue back and forth. I mean, it happened. I had a C&E bet out, and I think it hit at like $75 on the 11. So it should have paid 5.25. She handed me $2.25 and then sent the dice out. And I literally had to put my hands over the table, like, do not throw them down here. And I'm kind of trying to get the box's attention. Like, I'm showing him the chips, like, hey, here's what she gave me. This is not right. And he's like, no, that's right. And I was like, no, it wasn't a crap number. It was an 11. Well, what does that pay? And then you're like, well, it pays 7 times the whole bet on a split bet, and you try to get them in the right place. And they could not grasp it. It was very frustrating.
So I'm sorry to hear that. And as you were saying it, I was disappointed because I was excited to hear, your thoughts on Encore Boston Harbor, and excited to go out at some point myself. So as we fast forward into Saturday, what changed? What leads you to where I started with, we might go back again?
I finally found a good crew on Saturday night. There was a guy that was on stick that was probably one of the best stickmen I've seen in a long time. He was extremely fast, intelligent, funny, knew how to keep the game moving, and he had 2 competent dealers with him. And it changes the whole game. Even though they're still taking the vig up front, there's still no feature bet. So as a place I'd want to play every day, I would say no. Having a good crew, changes the whole dynamic, and it made me more engaged with what I was doing.
Right. Now, how much does, and I ask myself this sometimes, am I not having a good time because, or, am I blaming the crew unfairly because the table is terrible, and I'm having bad luck, and so I'm just cranky or that kind of thing. Do you think your opinion changed because your luck started to turn, or do you really think
no,
it was you got a really good crew and that made the experience so much more enjoyable?
I mean, you've played with me long enough to know that I really don't care for winning or losing. It doesn't matter to me at all, honestly. At the end of the day, it may be frustrating to lose on a big session.
He's not lying, folks. He takes losses better than Chris takes losses.
I really don't care. And so, no, I mean, if we're in Vegas with a good crew at Wynn, if Rick and his guys and Liz and all their on our table, I could lose $20,000 and I'd probably still be smiling and say, well, that was still fun though. Bad luck, but fun.
Right.
With these guys,
I might then go home.
Yeah. I mean, I may leave earlier just to try to limit the losses. But a perfect example, one of our Twitter followers, Brian, joined me Saturday morning at the tables. And when he got there, it was about as cold as ice. I was way, way down. And then he actually had a terrific roll that got us up positive. But I still, we made money on the session. I colored up because I'd had enough. I was winning and I colored up, which tells you one thing, that I usually don't do that. If we're having good rolls, I'm not going to leave, but I still wanted to get away from the table because I just wasn't having a good time. We were making money and I still wasn't having fun. And that's when I know it's not as good as it should be.
One sidetrack I wanted to go on. You said oftentimes when you're winning, you'll just stay. And I see on Twitter and I hear people say when you're ahead, and even in dealers, when you're ahead, you should leave a table. And I think it's important. I was thinking about when we think about our, people that are listening to us for the first time and learning about Chris and Josh and learning about Crap Vegas, and we gamble. And Chris, tell me if I'm wrong about you, but I'm not playing craps to win a lot of money. Yes, it's wonderful when it happens.
Sure.
And I'm also hopefully not playing any game, whether it's craps or blackjack or anything. I'm not playing to hopefully lose a lot of money. What I like is the game. I like playing the games, and I like being there and enjoying the camaraderie with dealers and other players sometimes. And, so when we talked last episode about, playing for 10 hours on that day and ended up, I don't remember what we finished, but barely up or barely down. It wasn't a lot either way.
Yeah, not enough to worry about.
That's like a perfect day for me. And so it's, some people say when you're ahead, you should walk away. And I think that's true if you're, depending on what your goals are. My goal is just to stay and play for as long as I can and hopefully not lose a ton and enjoy myself.
I think it varies for me based on where I'm playing.
Sure.
So if I'm playing locally, at one of my joints around here that's within 45 minutes or an hour, if I get out there, my general rule is I get to the highest point that I think I'm going to get to. And then once I drop probably 10, 20% from there, then I'll color up and head home.
Right.
You're never going to catch it at the peak because we don't know what the peak is. That's impossible. I'm also not going to play it back down to zero because then that would put me in a poor mood.
And I try not to do that too.
But if we're in Vegas, it's it's a whole completely different dynamic. Because if you and I walk up to a table and win 10 grand in 2 hours or 10 grand in 30 minutes,
right,
we can't just stop playing. Well, then what are we going to do for the rest of the day? We didn't give the host enough play, so they're not going to invite us back. I mean, there's a lot of things that kind of play into this, but I play because I enjoy playing. I don't play to make money.
Well,
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, as I tell people, dealers or whoever in Vegas, sometimes when that happens, when you have a great win right away, it's like, what am I going to do? I only come here to gamble and eat.
Yeah.
So you can only have so many meals.
Yeah, no, I mean, if we're making money, that's great. If we're losing money, that's great. But we enjoy playing the game itself. The goal is always to come as close to break even as we can. And somebody on Twitter asked me yesterday if this is my job, and I just laughed because no, I have a real job that supports this gambling habit.
Chris,
but at the
you're
same
a dice
time,
setter, and this is your professional job.
Yeah, I mean, but how many professional dice players are there? There better be zero because there's no way to win at the game long term. If I was playing blackjack consistently like I was in my middle 20s, that still wasn't my main job. But at that point, I was actually trying to earn money. That was my goal. With craps nowadays, no, I fully expect to lose every dollar that I play, and I just hope it works out and I come close to breaking even.
So I know we've been talking to everybody about Encore Boston Harbor for a while, but I started at the beginning by saying, and you've heard all this and some not super positive thoughts on some areas. So what leads you and leads me to the conclusion that we would go back, that you would go back and I would like to go back, and why in the fall? You kind of touched on it earlier, but.
Well, I mean, why should we go back? I think there's enough threads there that you can grasp at to make something an enjoyable trip. The rooms are very nice. The casino itself is beautiful. The food that I had was good. I stuck mostly to room service, but it was good. I had no problems with that as well. And so many places nowadays you can't even get room service. So it was nice that they had it. Drivers were very nice. Blackjack dealers were great. The casino floor is amazing. I think there's enough there that you should definitely see it and make your own opinion on what you think about it. And I'm not going to let you come without me. So it will be a joint trip. I think the fall is a good time to be in the Northeast anyways, because it's usually pretty out. The weather's nice. It might be, slightly more enjoyable. But I do think before we get completely off of this, I will mention it's not in a great area, the casino itself. It's kind of, from what I understand, it was built on like a toxic waste dump from a bunch of old manufacturing. I'm not joking,
I didn't
Josh.
know that.
I mean,
no, I know. I didn't know that.
This is from what the driver told me on the way back to the airport. It was constructed on like a toxic sort of landfill. They had to, dig out all that old bad soil and ship it off to other landfills across the country. It ended up taking them twice as long and 3 times the cost to eradicate all the issues with it. And if you just look out the window, I took a Twitter picture that kind of framed it nicely. But if I would have panned up or to the left or right past that windmill in that picture, it's a bunch of old industrial, like manufacturing buildings that look like they're 150 years old. It's not pretty. It's not an area you would ever stroll out of and just try to walk somewhere. And then on the way back, the driver even told me, he said, hey, this is the way that we have to go. There's a lot of traffic. There is a backup way, but he said they don't like us going that way from appearance perspective, that it's not a route that anybody feels safe or wants to go down. So he said, if you really want to take that, I was like, no, I got plenty of time. But it's not a great area. The clientele's not great. So, maybe this fall it will be better. I don't know.
And the reason, folks, we were thinking about specifically kind of later in the year is, and Chris touched on it, you didn't accumulate many, at least comparable tier credits to the way we play in Las Vegas.
No, I forgot completely about touching base on that, but I've never seen an earning rate so low in my life, Josh, for any casino. I know what we earn at Win Vegas consistently with our play level. Josh and I always bank on the fact that we're going to earn somewhere between 500 and 1,000 tier credits an hour. That's pretty much standard for us, I think, at this point. And at one point, I think I finished a 2.5 hour session, and I take screenshots on the Win app before I start and when I end so I can keep track. And at one point, there was nothing earned. I mean, just absolutely zero. So I thought, well, maybe they hadn't closed me out yet. Finally, like 20 minutes later, I see it closed out. And for a 2-hour session, I earned like 310 points. And I mean, from that perspective, you could never play there if you were ever, trying to build up any sort of, level with the casino. And at the same time, you're also not earning comp dollars. I mean,
Right.
for some people, that's going to be extremely important, because if you don't earn tier credits, you're not earning comp dollars. So yeah, there's a lot working against them from that perspective. So I think we'd rather hit our tier threshold that we want to hit for the year and then visit when it doesn't matter as much.
That's exactly what I was thinking too, and I think we're in agreement there. We both are hopeful to reach win black status again this year, and if we can do that, in Vegas, then I think we'll be more likely to pop off to, not so much pop off, but head up to Encore Boston Harbor. I'd still would like to see it and kind of see what I think and give it another chance for you, and
For sure.
but I'm not in any rush either.
I wouldn't be. I'm not in any rush to get back either. So,
But we are, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but appreciative of and not to, we're not
No.
shills for win, but appreciate the effort,
No, and if anything, Josh, I feel like this makes us seem a hell of a lot more credible, because I'm not exactly saying great things about a win property, which is kind of outside my wheelhouse. But no, I mean, the host was great, property's great, all that stuff is great, and they were extremely nice to bring me out for the weekend, and we'll definitely go back. And the host was terrific. He's probably one of the nicest people I've talked to in a long time. But yeah, it's just not a place, because of its location, no other casino options around it. And, some of the things working against it. It's not a place I'm in a rush to get back to, but we'll go for sure.
Oh, I know one more question I wanted to ask just about the casino layout. I know, Encore in Encore Vegas has the casino with windows.
Yes.
Is Encore Boston Harbor, is it natural light into the casino, or is it your usual?
No, not that I saw. I think there was, like, on the second mezzanine level that I didn't walk around to that side of it, there was like an exit that led you outside. So it had glass doors there, so you could kind of see some light. But no, for the most part, I didn't see any sort of like windowed wall or anything like that. Quite frankly, Josh, there's nothing scenic outside that they want.
Well, I was going to say, so you're not gambling and looking out at the beautiful harbor. And
no, and something else I'll even point out that I thought was kind of, I guess, was different. They do have security when you first walk in, checking IDs on people that look younger. Thankfully, I didn't get ID'd. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. But one thing I did think was really weird is there's no ATMs on the casino floor. None. Like, I walked up to all the ticket cashing machines, like trying to stick an ATM card, and it's like, no, we don't do this.
That's interesting.
And eventually I finally followed signs, because I'd gone down on the casino floor. I wanted to pay some slots real quick, but I had no cash on me. So I was just going to take out a few $100 to play some slots. You have to literally go outside the casino floor to one little ATM that's stuck in a corner away from everything else. And the ATM makes it very clear to you that there are no credit card advances. It's
That's
checking debit
so
card.
Different from Vegas.
Yeah, no, you're not taking a credit card advance. You're not getting money on the floor. The state must have some very specific requirements on cash access.
Well, I know it's we've probably exhausted our discussion of Encore Boston Harbor, and for folks listening, I'm sorry we went on for 35 minutes talking about Encore Boston Harbor, but I think
I can keep going.
I certainly wanted to know about Chris's experience, and hopefully, those of you that haven't gone, found this a worthwhile discussion. I don't think we want every episode to be, it won't be, 35-minute trip reports, but I thought this was worth kind of diving into, more than usual. As Win fanboys, I've converted Chris over to Michael Traeger, helped convert me to, I didn't mention him last episode, so I thought I owed, I should throw his name out as far as helping convert me to a Win fanboy, but I helped convert Chris. And so I was really excited to hear about this adventure.
Yeah, for sure. It was fun. I enjoyed the weekend, had a good time overall. So nothing, too negative.
So Chris, where would you like to take us next?
Josh, we were going to talk a lot about casino hosts this week, but I think we should push it to the next podcast, honestly, because I don't think we're going to give it the amount of attention that it deserves.
We can do that.
But we can definitely jump down to some other questions that people had sent us that we can try to address since we got 10, 15 minutes left. So let's get rolling that way. So somebody had asked a couple weeks ago how they get started playing blackjack in a more serious manner. They asked, where should I play? What tools are available, etc.
This part I'll just be quiet for.
I was going to say, Josh, you want to take this? This is right in your wheelhouse.
I'll be on mute.
So for me, I think there's a couple key things that can help you now. There's a lot more tools now today than there used to be back in the day. The first part's going to be building a bankroll. It doesn't have to be a massive bankroll, but I mean, if you want to get started playing blackjack and have any chance of success, I mean, you got to build up at least a few $1,000s. And quite frankly, I think you really need to be around 10 to give yourself a shot to make it work, because there's so much variance at the beginning, especially when you're first learning how to play. But all of this assumes that you're going to be counting cards. Because if you're not counting cards, then no, you're not going to make money playing blackjack long term, and you're wasting your time. So nowadays, honestly, when somebody asks me that question, I almost always push them to blackjackapprenticeship.com. Colin Jones has a terrific site where they have plenty of videos and training tools and lessons to talk anybody that's never done it before and turn them into a decent card counter. And they have, everything you could want. They have bankroll management. They have, I think the most valuable part is they have a message board where you can go on there and you can connect with other potential APs in your area, because doing this as a team is always a heck of a lot better than doing it individually. And you can also get information on each individual casino, on what games they're actually offering, what rules are on the table, do they have a stand 17 game at a reasonable limit, and do they allow you to split 4 times and double after split and all that good stuff. All the things that you really need to know can be found on the website in advance. So that's very helpful.
So
and
Chris,
I was going to say, finding a team, I think is terrific if you can, because doing it by yourself, I just don't think it's going to work at the beginning.
So Chris, as somebody that can count cards,
not anymore, Josh. I'm officially retired. If anybody's listening,
no, I understand that. I just said you have that ability.
Sure, yeah,
that's what I meant. More of like how, and I don't know enough. I'm not sophisticated in that area at all. Are you able? Is that so? If you go and you can play just blackjack and play standard, basic strategy, and if one is not counting cards, like, is that a switch? I guess I'm trying to say, is that a switch you can flip on and off? Does that make sense?
I think so.
You can just translate into being a basic strategy blackjack player. You
can't be a card counter without knowing basic strategy. That's the basis that everything is built on. So if you're going to make basic strategy errors, then stop, learn that 100%, and then transition to try to learning, to try to learn a high-low count or whatever it is that you want to use. I think the biggest difference for me is, if I, back in the day, not anymore, but back in the day, if I was going to be doing a session where I was counting, you want to limit the interactions that you have with dealers and other players. You want to get as many hands in per hour as you can possibly get in, and you don't talk much, you don't tip. It changes the whole way that you play. So nowadays, I'd much rather enjoy myself and have a conversation with a dealer, throw some tips out here and them to keep them happy. You can't do those things if you're going to count cards, because you're going to get distracted, you're going to lose your count, and it's all going to go to hell. So I think you can turn it all on and off. I mean, if I wanted to start doing that again tomorrow, theoretically I could. I just don't find it enjoyable anymore, and I don't need the money, so I don't.
And that's kind of what I was going to ask, and what I've heard, just from what I've listened to on various podcasts and read, that obviously card counting is serious, and you have to be focused, and you have to pay attention to everything, and it's not, you're not playing for fun. You're not recreationally
there's nothing enjoyable
gambling, obviously,
about it.
right? And I think that's what's changed for you. As you said, you don't need the money. You're not trying to do this. So you're going there to have a good time and have a good experience. And I think I am too.
For sure. Yeah. If I'm stepping up to a blackjack table nowadays, mostly I'm going to play perfect basic strategy. I'm going to use maybe a 1-3, 1-4 bet spread. I'm not going to go very far. And if something becomes blatantly obvious that I should take advantage of, I'll try to. But I'm not sitting there and trying to spread like crazy, draw a ton of attention, and get backed off at a blackjack table. Because at the end of the day, every time you get backed off from a casino, there's a decent shot they're going to trespass you and walk you from the whole place. And it's very rare nowadays, I find, that you get backed off just from blackjack. And they say, we don't want your action, but you can play any other game.
You can play craps, yeah.
You hear that a lot, but I don't see that happening as much anymore. I think they'd rather 86 you off the whole property. And I don't want to run the risk of, burning a host, coming and then getting kicked out an hour later. That doesn't entice me at all.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah. So let's go we had a couple other quick fire questions that people had sent us. Josh, we could probably do a whole episode on this, but what are your biggest gambling pet peeves?
Oh, ladies, that's a good question. I, obviously, and you mentioned it when you were talking about Boston Harbor, I'm not a fan of people buying in mid-roll. That's
exactly what I was going to say.
As a craps player, that's probably my number one. And if anybody's not familiar with craps, buying in mid roll just means if there's already been a point established in craps, or if there's a roll going on, and somebody is buying in for chips or whatever. I guess buying in for chips. Sorry, that's obvious. And doing that in the middle of the roll, and obviously in the odd side of things, it doesn't make any difference. You are just as likely to throw a 7 as you are whether somebody buys in or not, or just as likely to throw, a 6 or whatever the point is. But gamblers, and particularly craps players, perhaps, are superstitious, and you like the rhythm of the game to go along as it is, especially if the table is doing well and you don't want things to change. And there's superstitions about, when a cocktail server comes up and brings a drink to a shooter, that's bad luck. And everyone's heard when the die goes off the table, that's, ask for same die, or don't ask for same die, or, whatever. Gamblers are superstitious. So I think that, and the big one that really does just interrupt your flow and enjoyment of the game is somebody buying in mid-roll. And it's hard. I know. One of my things that I can't stand is standing at a table watching the action and not participating. And sometimes at the end of a roll, if I'm waiting to pay off a marker, I have to stand there and watch the next roll, and it drives me crazy. So I get the, how difficult it is to come there, find your spot at the craps table and not do anything, to just wait for that 7 to come out, or wait for somebody to make their point. And then, that's a time that's appropriate to buy in. But that's the one that gets me. And Chris, I think you're nodding. I think that's probably the same with you.
Yeah, I think I would have given the same exact speech, Josh. I mean, you know me. If a die goes off the table, I just roll the boat and send them out to me. I do not need to wait for it. It pisses people off at the table. No, you got to get the same die. That's not me at all. I'm not superstitious about anything like that. The buying a mid roll it makes me mad because it slows things down so much. And it's just rude. It's just common courtesy says, don't do this. So I don't understand the rush for people to do that. It's the same as making late bets. That's a big pet peeve of mine. How many times when dice are sent, God, this weekend it happened 1,000,000 times, but how many times dice were sent out, you pick the dice up, you're about to throw them down the table, and as soon as they leave your hand, there's a guy reaching in to put, one guy, a don't pass bet, I mean, just...
Oh, interesting. Usually it's the field, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot of don't players. They were trying to make bets that you couldn't even really make half the time. But yes, arms were all over. Arms got hit all the time. I hit the dealer's arms 4 times this weekend.
Wow.
Where they sent the dice, I throw them, and they reach across to grab money. I was like, oh, come on. Does it change anything? Absolutely not. The dice are, they're going to land on me every time. It's not going to change it. You only remember the times that it results in a 7, and that's why it feels worse. But yeah, it is frustrating. And as a blackjack player, I think the same way people get so superstitious over, taking a hit if you're the last player, if you're in third base on the table on a buzz card, or splitting to 2 hands when it's going really well, you're going to mess up the flow of the cards. I mean, there are no flow of the cards. They come out in the order that they come out. So no, I'm just not very superstitious about any of that stuff. So it really doesn't bother me when people do stupid stuff.
I was going to say in the mid-roll buy-in, the one time that it doesn't bother me is if I'm the only one at the table.
Sure.
If I can say, if somebody else comes up and said, and a lot of times in that situation, somebody will ask, particularly at, at places with more sophisticated gamblers and that kind of thing, they'll ask, do you mind if I buy in? And usually if I'm by myself, or if somebody asks, usually I'll say yes. Maybe if I can't even think of a situation where I've said no to that question. If usually somebody is polite enough to ask, I will invite them in. And I guess maybe that's it. If you really are have ants in your pants and need to get in on the action, ask the shooter, how they feel and take their lead. That's one idea, but
agreed.
Still not my favorite thing.
In my eyes, it's only a bad thing because it's rude to do without asking. Right. So if you ask, I have no problem with it. Even if it is a full table, if somebody's like, hey, do you mind if I jump in? Sure. At least you were nice enough to ask. But don't just throw your cash on the table and stop everything, not caring about other people.
And then the one extension of that drives me absolutely crazy is when people buy in and then don't play in the roll. You stop the action.
I don't. Yeah. Any action off this money? No, I'm good. So why did you do it then?
Right.
But then
that one sends me over, especially if, if the bad number comes next, or,
you hit then on one thing I had forgot about that actually is a pet peeve of mine. It's not a player issue. It's a dealer/box/floor issue. Nothing makes me madder than when I ask for a marker. We're mid-play, so I'm dwindling down on chips.
Right.
And I ask for a marker to kind of get it refilled before we really get to the next big roll. And then they stop middle of the roll to send that money out when I don't need it at the time. We're in the middle of a roll. Everybody gets pissed off about that. And more important, you can't do anything about it. You may have asked for that marker 5 minutes ago, and they're just now getting around to sending it, but it happens to be in the middle of somebody else's roll, and you piss them off. Yeah. I wish all boxmen or floors that are handling that would hold marker issuance until the end, an end of a dice run, and then send it. Do it before the come out roll, but don't do it mid roll.
I know what you mean. I feel the same way.
Yeah, because you can't fix it, and then people are mad at you, and I don't like people being mad at me.
Me either.
Okay. What percentage, Josh, of your daily mail would you say is casino marketing? Just at your house, in your box every day?
Well, I wouldn't say I get that much paper, snail mail, casino mail anymore. I still get mailers from Venetian. I get a fair bit of paper from them. I get some things from the downtown properties. I get Plaza that sends me things. The Derek Stevens properties, Golden Gate. I think, I get mailers from all the Derek Stevens properties telling me I can get $30 off a room at Golden Gate. It's kind of fun to, I enjoy looking and maybe someday if the podcast goes well and Crap Vegas goes well and we want to go out and adventure out for people, maybe one of us could be talked into staying overnight at the Golden Gate or something like that. But it would take and I don't mean to, I'm not meaning to offend, Golden Gate particularly. It's just, again, when, if I can get a room at Wynn, I'm going to usually choose to stay there. But and then Caesars, of course, I think they're famous for this email wise. I get just a ton of offers from Caesars. And when I say offers, I don't mean necessarily great offers, but just the amount of the volume of mail that comes in is huge. And MGM, I get a fair bit. They go in, I'll get my Bellagio email, my Aria email, my MGM Grand email, all kind of rolling in one tranche of, okay, the MGM offers are out.
I was going to say, I wish they wouldn't do that, because any MGM property you've ever played at, when they send that one offer, you get a hotel room plus $500 in free play and $250 in food.
Right.
They send once from each property they have.
That's exactly
so
right.
You get 8 emails with the exact same offer.
And I will say, sorry, Chris, now that, having worked up, status wise at Wynn and that kind of thing, I do get excited. So I think there are 2 different types of emails that come from Wynn. There's the very basic generic Wynn email that kind of goes to everybody. That's, the
marketing department.
Yeah. The marketing department emails. And then they have, and then there's the ones that oftentimes come, they're labeled as coming from my host. Yes. And anytime I see a Wynn email, I get kind of excited to see, what possibly is coming up, or do they like me less than they used to, or
I'm the same way.
But yeah, those I get excited about. I think that's volume wise, it would be Caesars as far as number 1, and MGM properties is number 2 as far as the most stuff I get.
Okay, maybe I'm just playing in a different world or something. I can't go a day without receiving at least one piece of marketing material from a casino. And on an average day, I bet you I get 2 to 3 different things.
Wow.
I bet you
it's not 20, like that for me.
It's probably 20 a week. And it runs the gamut from downtown properties, a lot of Caesar stuff coming, and and then they have different things like for a free flight and a trip to Harrah's Laughlin and all that.
Oh yeah, I didn't think about
Caesar's
the
air
Laughlin.
bullshit.
Yeah.
I get a lot of that stuff. I get a lot of stuff from MGM. All my local properties send out a ton of stuff. So yeah, Mohegan Sun sends me a bunch of stuff for some reason.
Interesting.
I get a lot of random junk from that sort of thing. But I think you touched base on one thing that I did want to mention. I feel like once you get to a certain level as a player, you really don't care what the generic marketing email is, because it's meaningless.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't even really pay attention. And as we've kind of started to develop this podcast and the website, I think about, I'm writing an article that I've been writing for a while on Wynn rewards and hope to have that up soon. But it's a little bit tricky because at the levels we play, I'm not that beholden, if you will, to the level that I'm at. So, the actual, whether it's MGM and being platinum, or whether it's Caesars and being diamond, or whether it's MGM and being black, or, whatever the level is, it's hard for me to tell how much of what I'm getting offered is based on that level versus my history of play. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I think they're two completely different things.
So
because half the time that we go to win, I don't have a marketing offer,
right?
Because I've already used the one for the period or whatever. We're going back, and at no point do I think, oh no, there's no offer available, I can't go. No, right. I mean, there's an offer available. It's just not the marketing offer. So that
we're fortunate enough to recognize it. Sorry, Chris, we're fortunate enough, folks, to have that and realize we don't necessarily have to keep our eye on our email just to see if we can get a room on this particular weekend. I've been really, since I transitioned from Caesars Properties over to Bellagio, which I talked about last episode, in a position where I can contact my host and say, can I get a room on these days? And I haven't ever had a host say no to that. And so the offers are more kind of fun to see than anything else. What is
just to track what your value is? Did it go up this time? Did it go down?
Right. What does MGM think that I'm worth for them to get, for them to try and get me to come back there and play more often? And with Wynn, it's a little different because I am, I've been fortunate enough occasionally to receive, a really nice little bit of promotional chips. And those I've only, I think, had it maybe twice that I had that offer, and it's really exciting to get those. So when I see an email from Wynn, I'm always excited to see what it is.
And this trip this past weekend to Encore Boston is a perfect example of what you're describing, though, Josh. It's not like I had an active marketing offer from there. I've never been there before. It didn't stop them from doing anything that they wanted to do. And I mean, if you look at rooms, I mean, God, they wanted like $800 or $900 a night for rooms this weekend, because I didn't even factor in that it was a holiday weekend for one, and I was literally giving them 3 days notice. But it didn't stop them.
We recognize we're a little blessed in that area. But,
so I mean, it's hard to complain about that sort of thing, because I know there's a lot of people that were spending their hard-earned money paying full rack rate. So it does change the dynamic a little bit. But you are right. I pay very little attention to the actual marketing offer. The real question is just what the host is going to do. Because you don't have to have an offer. And I think that applies to almost any casino group. Cosmo used to do the same thing for me. They'd issue a free room and some free play, but that really didn't affect what I got. And right. MGM, when I was, I think I'm platinum with them. Those offers half the time don't correlate with what you're actually getting. Okay, so let's move on to one final question, Josh. Somebody had asked us, what's the one place that you haven't gambled that you want to? And let's rule out Encore Boston for now, for discussion purposes.
Right. Well, Encore Boston Harbor would be my answer. Well, I think it would be my answer, maybe before your trip. But the real place, the place I'd like to go, there was two that came to mind when I knew Chris was going to ask this question, and I thought about it. And first is Atlantic City. I'd love to go to Atlantic City and play in Atlantic City sometime, just for the experience of it, and for being able to see how close it is to and feel to Vegas. I know it's different, but some of the similarities, and being able to be in a cluster of properties that you can walk from property to property and just see the the East Coast. And you touched on it with Boston, but see the East Coast demeanor. It's very different from me on the West Coast, and what the dealers are like and that kind of thing. And I think
it's a lot more rude in general. Yeah.
It's just different, Chris. It's just different, more direct, and less passive aggressive than we are out here in the Pacific
for sure.
Northwest.
Yeah. No, they get their point across very quickly, and they don't have any hesitation for your feelings. I'll say that.
But I've heard, go ahead.
I was going to say, I've been to Atlantic City a handful of times. I used to actually go there a lot back in my mid-20s. It's a great place for a card counter. Because it's not illegal. They can't bar you from the property for it. They can flat bet you.
Right.
But yeah, so I mean, it's almost a state that encourages card counting from that perspective, because they can't kick you out over it.
Right.
So even if you get backed off, you're just getting flat bet. So it's really a win-win. I really like the city. I haven't been back in probably 7 or 8 years. But yeah, you do have a cluster of properties together. It's on the beach. So if you go in the summer, you can literally walk out of your, hotel room and you're on, a boardwalk or a beach.
Right.
So you can get the best of both worlds, and it feels the closest to Vegas without being Vegas. It's completely different than Encore Boston. That did not feel like you were in, a gambling town. You were just at a gambling property. It's almost the same as going to a local joint here.
Right. I wouldn't mind sometime going to Biloxi for kind of the same idea. I wouldn't mind going to, was it Harrah's Cherokee? Is that, I think, in North Carolina, maybe?
Yes. Yeah, that's heading out
I've
my
heard,
direction here. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard nice things about that property. I haven't been to Harrah's New Orleans in years, since before Katrina. So it's been redone since then. I wouldn't mind checking that out. But I think Atlantic City would be my first place that I'd like to go to.
Have you ever been to Hard Rock in Tampa?
Nope. I'd like to do that too.
It's probably been 15 years.
It's coming to the Mirage.
Well, yeah, I mean, why go to Florida? You can stay on the West Coast. I used to go there a lot, like 15, 16 years ago. I had some work customers down there that put me in the Tampa area a lot. And it was tremendous. I mean, huge, absolutely massive place, great dealers. Do highly recommend that. I think the one place that I haven't gone yet that I do want to get to at some point just to see it is down in New Orleans. Go to like Harrah's New Orleans down there. Yeah. And I think there's more than one property, but that's the one I used to always see that I wanted to go to just to check it out. Cause I feel like that would be a fun area to be in anyways. I like the city of New Orleans. So, why not combine it with a gambling trip?
Right. The Harrah's in New Orleans is actually, I'll tell this story on a different episode, but is really what got me hooked on craps, by the way.
Oh, well, see, I can't wait to hear that. That will, that will be very exciting for a future episode. You're really teasing people here, Josh.
That's right.
Okay, so
it's not
I guess we'll start.
Story.
No, I mean we'll start to wrap it up though. So if any of you'd like to donate to the cost of hosting the site, the podcast, or anything else that you have in mind, please click on the button found on our homepage at crapvegas.com. We're trying to post at least one article a week on there that we find interesting, and maybe even two in the future. It just depends on how much we have to talk about. My two-parter on how I became a gambling addict and where I am now is live on there, and I know a lot of people gave me some great feedback on that. We just posted an article about casino hosts called The Good, Bad, and the Ugly. If you want to hear a little bit about what you should expect from casino hosts and, how great that can be and how to get one and all that stuff, we can talk about that. But, we'd love to have you guys support us any way you can if you'd like to. And if not, like we always say, just go support You Can Bet on that, because we'd rather you support Mike, Dr. Mike and Mark. That would be more beneficial for us. But Josh and I are heading back to Vegas June 10th through the 14th. We'll be staying at Wynn. So if anybody wants to meet up and, throw some dice, please let us know. Just send us a DM on Twitter or send us a message through the website. Josh, anything you want to talk about before we get out of here?
I have a real quick story that I wanted to tell you. I don't know if you've heard this story before or not, but so I don't know how many other people are like this. Chris, I don't know if you're like this, but when I go to Las Vegas, I want to make sure that I have whatever my budget is. Let's say my budget is $250. But I have a psychological thing in my head. I want to make sure I have more than I need.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that that I'm never out. Even if my budget is $200, if I have in my head that I have a final limit of, let's say, $500, I want to make sure that I don't ever hit zero. So yes. I was in Las Vegas one time on a trip, and I don't remember what my budget was. Let's say it was $2,000, and I had a losing first day or losing session, and I was almost out of cash. And I was over the limit of what I could withdraw daily on ATM. I didn't want to spend, whatever the percentage is they charge you for a cash advance at the cage. Mm-hmm. And I thought, if I'm going to have more money, and I wasn't at the point where I needed it, but I wanted to have that cushion. If I'm going to have more money, I'm going to punish myself and make myself walk to the bank to get cash.
Okay.
So I walked about, I want to say 3 miles down, I think it's Flamingo to a Chase Bank.
It looked really close when you were there, right? Yeah.
And it's 115 degrees. And, I'm this, chubby guy out walking, walked myself to the bank, got the cash that I wanted, punished myself walking back. And you're walking through some not great blocks.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was my punishment for, exceeding the where I wanted to be. Was I forced myself. I didn't take a cab, or I don't even think they had Ubers back then, but take a cab to the bank. I walked it. And so I'm out there sweating with, $3,000 in cash and waiting for somebody to come and kill me and take my money. But I made it back. But that's the story I wanted to tell. I'm like that with I always like to, and this kind of goes back into our last discussion about markers and lines of credit and that kind of thing. The idea is I never want to spend as much as I have available to me in credit, but it's nice to have that cushion if I do decide, I have a limit, but then I have a, that's maybe a soft limit, and then I have a hard limit. And I always like to just, in my head, it makes me feel better thinking, okay, if things really go wrong, I can get up to, I can spend up to this amount, whatever that is. So my casino stroll, if you will, or way to step away from the tables was punishing myself walking to the bank.
Jeez, Josh, I don't think I would ever do that. And if I did force myself to walk all the way down there, I'd sure as hell catch a cab coming back.
No, I punished myself. I didn't have any water or anything either. It was awful.
I'm too old and too frustrated to do that sort of thing at this point in my life.
10 or 15 years ago for me, so I have
yeah, that will teach you a lesson.
I'm too old for that now, right?
Jeez, okay,
that's what I've
guys.
got.
Yeah, well, thank you. Oh, before we go, one last thing. We do have a lot of people that had either sent us donations or bought shirts from us. I didn't make a list, and maybe I should have, to thank all of you, but thank you again for doing so. We're not trying to make any money off this, this endeavor at all. It helps pay some of the hosting fees and stuff like that associated with the website, the podcasting fees. But at the same time, I think we turned around and gave most of it back out to the podcasts that we like as donations. So, I mean, we're just trying to support others that are doing something that we enjoy. So we do thank you all for all of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Chris. I was just going to say, absolutely. We really appreciate the support that we've already had, both, in donations, but, and in just feedback and that kind of thing. And I wanted to mention, only because you mentioned it to me, and I remember Tim from A Better Life was one of maybe the first donation that we had, just a little bit of support to us. And that meant a lot. And so thank you all for the encouragement so far and the support. And I bought myself a t-shirt with my own my hard way betting strategy. And I'm excited to wear it on the next trip and show it to the dealers at Wynn, who are going to just laugh me out of the building. But
no, they're going to do that anyways, no matter what you're wearing, Josh. I think we take more harassment from a couple dealers than anybody ever should. But you know what? We enjoy it, so they keep sending it our way. Well, anyway, thank you all for listening.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too, Chris. Sorry, we appreciate everybody's support, and we're still kind of learning what we're doing and what we want the show to feel like. And go ahead,
we've
Chris.
had far more people listening than we ever thought would. We've tried to keep track of our numbers and where it is, and it far exceeds anything we could have expected from a feedback and even just a pure listener count. So thank you all. Feel free to share it with somebody else that that isn't listening. The more the better. The bigger the community is, it just makes it better for everybody. Okay, guys.
Thanks so much.
We're going to get off here. Yeah, 2 weeks from now, maybe we'll have another one. Maybe we won't. We'll see. But we definitely have a long conversation on hosts that we needed to get to that we haven't yet.
Yeah, we have a lot of topics we went to. We passed over to discuss Encore Boston Harbor. So
that's true.
We'll keep people entertained.
Next time, we promise. We'll be somewhat on time, and we'll see you guys in a couple weeks. Thanks for listening.
Vegas, here we come.
Thanks for listening to the Crap Vegas podcast.
Have you ever been to Vegas?
Check out all our recent news and our Vegas trip calendar by visiting crapvegas.com.
See you in Vegas.